From Matthew chapter 19, verses 13 through 15. Small children were brought to Jesus so he could lay hands on them and pray for them. The disciples began to scold the parents, but Jesus said, "Let the children alone. Let them come to me. The realm of heaven belongs to such as these." And after laying his hands on them, Jesus left that town.
His name is Liam. In January, he was returning from preschool in Minneapolis on an afternoon like any other, wearing a blue knit bunny hat and a Spider-Man backpack. Federal immigration agents stopped him and his father on the street, and within days, they were in a detention facility in Texas, 1,200 miles from everything Liam had ever known, in a place no preschooler could even imagine to form a word that could be understood. 2,000 years ago, parents brought their children to Jesus. They wanted nothing complicated. They wanted a head placed on a small head, a prayer said over the child's shoulders, the ancient gesture that means, I see you, you matter, you are not invisible. But the disciples stepped in front of them. They weren't acting from cruelty. They were acting from a world that had taught them how things worked. Children in the first century Palestine occupied the lowest rung of everything. They had no standing. They had no status, nothing to offer in return. In the economy of honor that governed that world, a person of importance who turned their attention toward a child was understood to be misusing the time that God had given them. And the disciples, as devoted as they were, believed they were protecting something sacred, and they stepped in. So they did what devoted followers would do. When they believed they understood the mission, they managed the situation, and in managing, they blocked the pathway. Jesus turned that moment around. He turned to the disciples and said, "Let them come. Do not stop them, for the realm of God belongs to people like these." The realm of God. Not a consolation prize for the overlooked, not a future reward waiting for some great by and by, but the whole thing already belonging to the ones the disciples had just turned away. There is a current that runs through the ancient law, carrying a memory older than the Gospel of Matthew, flowing all the way back to the years when the Hebrew people wandered in the wilderness after their escape from Egypt. The law said, do not deprive the immigrant of justice. Do not turn away the orphan. When you harvest your field, do not go back for what you left behind. Leave it at the edges. Leave it there on purpose, because you remember what it was like to be the one without anything, to stand at the edge of someone else's harvest with those empty hands, to survive because someone somewhere had left something behind for you. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt. The memory of having been without is not merely history. It's a moral instrument, the very thing that has power to move us from sympathy to solidarity, from the good feeling into actual presence of being at the threshold, from knowing about need into knowing what it feels like from the inside. God built this truth into the law itself. A community that forgets that its vulnerability will eventually stop protecting the vulnerable. Forgetting is not merely an act of mind. Forgetting reshapes the sort of world, and slowly, without malice, without noticing, we begin to step in front of ones who came hoping for someone had left something behind. Now all of us have been formed by the cultures that raised us, taught what matters and what does not, who belongs and who does not. Most of us carry these lessons so deeply that we enforce them without recognizing the harm we cause, convinced we are simply keeping order as the disciples were, as every society is, until something breaks through and that whole logic gets turned around. Jesus keeps interrupting such formation. Jesus keeps turning to the ones the world had sorted to the edges. Jesus keeps announcing the authority of someone who knows something that the disciples did not yet know, that the realm of God belongs to the ones the world had pushed to the edges. And that circle of belonging keeps expanding. It keeps reaching past the disciples' careful boundaries, past every era's careful boundaries, landing always on whoever this world has most efficiently decided that does not belong. This blessing, it lands on the child in the bunny hat. It lands on the father whose hand he was touching. It lands on the family that arrived at the edges of a field ready for harvest that they did not own, in a country they did not yet feel like home, hoping someone had left something behind. Jesus doesn't say simply, be kind to these people or feel compassion. Jesus explicitly says, the realm of God belongs to them. Not as a future promise, but a present reality. Not something that they must earn, but something they already inhabit. The ones that were turned away are already inside, and they were never outside. All that sorting and all that turning away has always been operating on a logic that is foreign to everything that God is. And the invitation before us is not to merely feel moved, but to live differently inside that movement, to become people whose lives are slowly and daily being shaped by what God has always insisted, that the child coming home from preschool is already fully a citizen of the realm, that the family that arrived at the edges of the field is already fully held and welcomed, that every turn we make toward them is a turn toward being part of God's realm. The memory of our own vulnerability, our moments on the edge of someone else's harvest with empty hands, is the very thing that has the power to form us. It forms us into people who leaves behind a world that more fully embodies what God imagines. People who, when the vulnerable come, and they're always coming, wearing every kind of backpack, speaking every kind of language, do not step in front of them, but step aside and say, come in, come in. We have been waiting for you. Amen.